guys, and welcome back to Competitive Edge Podcast. So today, it's going to be a fun one. For all my guys out there, we know the importance of a good cut, looking good, feeling good, and all this. I know I'm somebody that fortunately still have a full head of hair, and I'm working through how that all looks. I think it's part of your first impression. It's how people will look at you. So no offense to the guys, if you don't have as much hair, that's okay too. But today, we're going to talk about some entrepreneurship. And Alexi Michael was introduced to me. And not only has he grown his coaching community, but the barbershop community and all of the people that I look at and go, these are entrepreneurs trying to figure out how to run a business. Maybe it's second, third generation that they've been in the family cutting hair, and especially for men. How do you build a business that you love, that you enjoy, and then scale that out to other verticals? So if you're out there today, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, you're going to enjoy this conversation of how do you take some of your passions and your talents, turn that into a business, and actually be profitable with it. So I'm excited to have Alexi on, and we're going to talk about all those things and more. So make sure you guys stay till the end, because probably be a couple of questions at the end you're going to want to hear, especially for my guys. Alexi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this.
Well, this is great, man. I love connection. So I'll just start there. Sylvia introduced us, and I always say to everybody, you're one connection away, you're one person away, and all this kind of stuff. And we got introduced by a mutual friend. And I always think of this today is if people don't know who you are, they don't know what you do, and they really can't connect to you, you're not playing big enough in today's world. So I know you help people build brands, you help people scale their businesses and all that. But as you look at it, what's the importance of even having a personal brand today in today's world, if you're a barber or doing something else?
Yeah, I mean, I think it applies to any industry, right? I think it's almost come to a point where I truly believe it's a necessity. You're at such a disadvantage when you're not on social media, because even when you think you're in a industry where you don't think that you need it, I promise you, your competition, one of your competitors has it, and they're just at an advantage because there's just more eyeballs for them, right? So that is the exact reason why I got to this point in my life, in this point in my career. And I've had so much success is because I've done this for over 10 years. I've been on social media for over 10 years. And it's like anything, what people don't realize with social media is that it's a skill set, and it takes time, and you got to keep consistently doing it before you get really good at it. So it takes time before more eyeballs come towards you. But what people do is they give up too early, right? It's like anything, like, it applies to the gym. It applies to anything we do in life. Like, you have to be consistently doing it. And unfortunately, the shitty thing about social media is that, and it's not that bad, but, we get into our heads a lot, right? So, when we're not getting that many views, or, we think we sound embarrassing or look embarrassing, when the truth is it's not the reality of the situation. So for me, I think I had to, fight a lot of these internal battles before I got to a point where I was like, look, man, I don't care. I just want to do this consistently. And through that consistency, I started getting some love, and that gained more confidence. And then it eventually became a snowball effect to, let's say, 250,000 followers, right? So, that's been kind of a bit of a summary of my experience with social media.
I love it. And you've built a great community. I know we'll jump into some of that. Now you've branched out, and you got some coaches, and you've got a mastermind and stuff coming up. But tell me where it started for you, because I know a lot of people, even the guy that cuts my hair and all that, he's second generation, his dad cut hair and all that. How did you get into the barber space and even start that?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't conventional. So quick summary, I had really, really tough childhood. My mom passed away from cancer when I was 16. Father left me at 17. So I was by myself. Grandmother took me in. At this point in my life, I was very lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. But I was also very creative. I had my own clothing, and I was an entrepreneur from, when I was 14. I used to sell clothes on eBay. I tried to figure out how to make money at a very young age because I wanted to play video games, and my parents wouldn't buy me video games. So I had to find a way. So I had my own clothing line at 16, and I did pretty well. I sold one of my first garments to, J Balvin, but I didn't have the capital to continue, running it. So eventually, and I was always fascinated with products of hair. I would always style, and I would spend the most amount of money for getting haircuts, right? So I would go to the most expensive stylist in my city. So then eventually I asked one of my friends that was cutting my hair, I was like, look, man, I'm thinking about this barbering thing. What should I do? He's like, do the opposite of what normal people do. I'm like, what is that in the barbering industry? I go, what does that mean? He's like, go to school for it. And the reason why is because for barbers, most of them are all self-taught. There isn't that many programs or educational systems that really teach you the styles that I wanted to learn. So I went to a school in Montreal, did it for 6 months, and throughout that journey, I remember the barber teacher, would tell me that I'm not cut out for this. He's like, literally, dude, he's like, go find another career. You're not creative. You suck. And that was like, and the thing is, I think I'm very grateful looking back that I had gone through so much like bullshit, so much pain that it was nothing new to me. That didn't break me because I had a lot of belief and I really liked it. I was like, let me just continue doing this thing. So, fast forward, I started working at a Cuban shop, graduated from that school, and the Cuban shop was just fades. So no one was really using scissors, and I would do 20 to 30 fades a day. And I remember the first, let's say 2 weeks, I had like 2-3 guys like get up out of the chair and want to fight me because of how bad the haircuts were. And I think this story is so important because it leads to where I'm at now. But I still felt like, and I eventually got good at it, 4 or 5 months in, eventually you have to get good at it, or else I would have had someone kill me at that point. But I found a group of individuals from London. That's when, honestly, I say this was kind of the Pandora's box. That's when everything really changed in my career. And what was fascinating about this group in London was that they were implementing, women's stylists with like traditional barbering. They were the first to ever kind of bridge the gap and become like the hybrid barber or hybrid stylist. Because what tends to happen, and I'm sure maybe it's happened to you, it's like when you want to get a short haircut, you go to the barber. But if you have long hair, you go to the stylist, you go to the women's salon. Why? Is because you think that the women are more educated to cater to those longer lengths versus with a barber, you're most likely going to get your beard done and get a shorter haircut, right? So when I went to London, they were the first to bridge the gap. And I was one of the first Canadians / Americans, like North Americans, to ever go to that school. And, fast forward 5-10 years, they became the biggest educational, they became the biggest educators. They had the biggest school and the biggest name. And I capitalized on that. I said, let me bring this back to North America and start educating people within North America. And my name honestly blew up. I became one of the biggest stylists in Canada within a 5-year span. And then I started traveling around the world, teaching, hundreds of barbers. So, what's crazy is that the reason why the story is important is because I wasn't a creative. I failed in art class. I always say this. I barely passed high school, but I had a crazy amount of drive, super ambitious and insanely hardworking. This isn't the right way of doing it, but when I was 17 cutting hair, I would drink 3 cans of Red Bulls to keep going. But what drove me to that was my passion. I just loved what I did. So that led to me just getting better at it. And why? Is because my inputs were a lot more than most people. I would be working 12-hour days on Saturdays and Sundays. I would grab a mannequin head and start practicing it. So eventually I just beat the competition. I looked at everyone around me. I'm like, who's the best? What do I need to do to be better than them? And that's what led to all these opportunities, from traveling the world, opening the biggest online platform. That was the reason for my success.
I love listening to those stories, man. And I'm glad. Thank you for sharing that, because I listen to that and I go, these are the fundamental truths in whatever business, whatever life. I think about my kids and things, of teaching them to do hard things, do things you may not see your friends doing, but there is a reward on the other side. And for you to go to London and to learn something, to be open to the fact there is a different way, bring that back, teach people, and start to just build. It's almost like you're paving your own way. And I love that you shared even your story with your parents, because a lot of times that drives us. And it's like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to end up like this. I want to make sure that I continue this direction. And sometimes that pain always finds like it's a little bit of fuel.
Yeah.
As you started to build this, you come back from London, I got to know, you're starting to teach people, you're starting to scale this thing out. What was one of those first, let's say, big challenges that you had? Because I know it wasn't probably sunshine and rainbows. If you walk back like, oh man, I got this great idea, guys, I'm going to teach you all. And they just came in.
Yeah.
What did you have to overcome early on?
Oh man, it was extremely challenging. And I think the hardest thing as an entrepreneur, it's like I never had figured it out. Never had I known like I would be in the position I'm in today. But the ambition, the drive, the passion I had, it was almost like security for me. I was like, if I love this so much, eventually I'll just figure it out. That was kind of what led me to just keep going. So what the biggest challenges were, even in high school, I was very I'm an introvert, like for me to be extroverted, that's something I had to work on. And that's like something that's not like, it's not in my core. Right. So, one of the biggest challenges was teaching, being in front of a group of people and being able to explain what I was doing was one of the hardest things. Yeah. And some of the biggest challenges were, actually like messing up pretty bad, like being on stage and like freezing in front of like 300 to 500 people. But I think those were the lessons that got me to become such a good educator and such a good speaker. I mean, I'm still building on that, but I think a lot of it comes down to just like having to go through a lot harder challenges, which led me to just become better. I think a lot of that, like, and that's the thing we tend to do a lot, which is like, we look at challenges and we look at, failures and mistakes as losses. I think it is a necessity. I think this is literally what got me to this position. It was the fact that I fell probably a lot harder than most people. And I'm almost so grateful that I did. I look back at those stories and I use those stories and like as points of like my life. Like I'm like, this is exactly why I got to this. Yes. And now it's almost like the driving force of my life. It's like, thank God I gone through this, because if it wasn't as painful, I probably wouldn't share about it. Right. So yeah, I'd say that.
Love that. Hey guys, it's Brian here. I hope you are enjoying the show. By the way, if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur looking to grow your personal brand, make a bigger impact, maybe increase your leads and grow your revenue, let's help you get started today by connecting up with my friends over at the Brand Builders Group. You've heard me talk about them, but if you're new here, this is definitely the first step to get you started in turning your reputation into revenue. Head over to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey. Again, to set up your free brand call, go to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey to set up a free strategy call with one of the team at Brand Builders, and they will dive into your specific goals for how you want to grow your personal brand. I can't wait to hear how it goes. I always look back, and anybody successful I know in any area of their life or multiple areas, if they haven't fallen down and gotten their teeth kicked in or had that moment, like I know I have several times in my 20 plus year career in mortgages, it's like, if you haven't been through those storms and been to the point where you're ready to quit, you're ready to give up on all of it, and you got so many people telling you it can't be done, you're never going to do it. I don't see them on the other side being successful. Yeah. Like it might happen to a few, but man, people love, it's almost like that hero's journey. Like they love to know, like, what did you overcome? What did you go through? And one of the things that stuck out to me, you brought up, I see this in entrepreneurs. So I'd love you to talk about this journey. As you talked about speaking, I struggled with this a few years ago. Started to realize, Alexi, like part of my job is now speaking on a stage and speaking to more people and doing presentations. And I'm like, I suck. Like I don't enjoy it. I'm not good at it. And so that means I like it even less because I know I'm not good at it. Yeah. And I set out on this course to get better. And I know some things I did, but I would love to know, what did you start to do to become better? Because I think a lot of people underestimate the power of communication, persuasion, influence, all this. How did you go from freezing on a stage to improving to where, I mean, you're very well spoken now. I've watched your stuff on content, 250,000 Instagram followers. Like you speak well, you position it well.
Yeah. I mean, one, I would say I'm very hard-headed. So I think similar to you, I sucked at it and I knew I sucked at it. And I was like, well, I don't want to feel that again. Yeah. I was like, I don't want to keep sucking at it. And it was just like, every time, this is another reason why I think I'm somewhat successful, is that every time I'm faced with fear, it's like I go and I'm like, perfect. This is an opportunity for me to kind of like try to, feel better about the situation, just like conquer this fear. Right. So that was probably the main factor for me to be like, I want to become an educator. But what led me to become better at it, and it's still something I'm practicing, is I actually have a trick that I use in my brain to kind of convince me to, speak better. But I'll explain kind of the main thing, which is, I'm sure is that I kept putting myself in more, scarier environments. So like I would just consistently just start teaching. So example, I would host free classes on the weekends and I would have 20 to 30 people. And I would do that every single weekend because I looked at it like similar how I would look at hair. I'm like, well, the only reason why I suck at this is because I haven't done it enough. So I'm like, I just got to keep doing it before I get to the bigger stages. And one thing I kept telling my brain was I said it to someone recently, and they were like, "Oh wow, I've never thought of that before." Which I hope it helps certain people. But what it was every time I would speak in front of a stage or speak in front of people, what I would tell myself, I'm like, "Look, Alex, like your goal is to speak in front of 30,000 people. So what is it to you? You're afraid of speaking in front of 100. You're afraid of speaking in front of 30. If we're trying to get to 30,000." This is just a little roadblock, buddy. Like we got to get through this if we want to get to 30,000. And that was kind of like the hunger that was like, you're right. Like this is nothing compared to where we need to be. Yeah. So I would keep playing this in my brain. But I will say, like, as of recently as well, like this is something you guys need to know. I think this is very important, is that it recently went on a stage in front of 3,000 people in Greece. And to be honest, that was the scariest moment in my life. Like I truly felt like I was gonna mess up, and I did. I didn't perform. I was supposed to be there for 45 minutes. My show was about 20, and yeah, it was like it's funny because I look back and I've done this so many times, and I'm still in a position where I'm still messing up. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's like, and I want people to know, even though I have these accolades and I'm 250,000 followers, I'm still not perfect. I'm still working on becoming better. So I still go through these phases, it's funny. It was a perfect moment for me to look back and be like, okay, well, I still got to make adjustments because I had my ego kicked in. I was like, dude, come on, I could do this. I could do this in front of hundreds of thousands of people. And I did it in front of the biggest amount of people I had ever done before, and I messed up. So I was like, perfect. It just means I got to adjust what I've done before.
I'm glad you shared that because, man, I think that's what people need to hear is the reps. And then constantly, I always say, is constantly assessing, like, how did I do? Where did I not do as well? Where do I need to prep? And I'm prepping for a big talk this Saturday. And I went through it with one of my coaches yesterday. And I went through it with my assistant, was helping me go through the PowerPoint. We were making tweaks this morning. Like I'm going through it. I'm rehearsing it. I'm bouncing it off people before Saturday going, hey, here's what I'm talking about. What do you think? Does this resonate? And you got to be so concise because like in 30 seconds to probably less, I need to tell them, this is what I'm talking about. This is why it's important. This is why you should listen. Yeah. I share with a few friends. They're like, man, I really like that. But then they would ask other questions like, oh, I didn't think about that. I can incorporate it in and just give you some real life of like, as I'm prepping for it, it's more than just memorizing and practicing and doing that. Like I'm seeking feedback from people that might be in the audience, similar type people at least. Yeah. And then I'm working through this thing before Saturday, putting the reps in, sharing it with people, practicing it. And so I love that you shared that. Is like, I still get up there, and even for this Saturday, I know I'll be nervous. Yeah. I know there'll be some nerves that are there. I've got a routine that kind of helps me through it. But yeah, I share a lot with people because that's the reality of it. And if you don't put yourself in those situations, I just don't think you can grow.
I agree. And another reason why I think I didn't perform was the intention behind why I was doing it. I went on there thinking it was about me. I was like, I want to perform. I want to make it this big show, rather than the intention of like, no. This is about them. Give them as much value as you can, because if the intention is pure about giving back, right? Regardless if you mess up, you go, you say the wrong word, or you stumble on your words, you're not going to think of the performance. You're going to think it's like, who cares? Like my goal is to just give back. So you're just going to flow a lot better. And that was why I had to assess. It was based off of ego. I'm like, I want to look like the star on the show. And I think it was like kind of like God being like, here you go. This is what I got. This is what I'm going to give you instead.
Yes. That's gold. One of my speaking coaches I still work with always shares that. It's like, it's not about you. And the people that try to be the most interesting in the room are not the ones that win. He's like, if you're the most interested and work the room and ask the questions, and part of my kind of pre-speech prep now is I bounce it off people that I know are similar avatars to who'll be in the audience. I'm like, what do you think? Here's what I'm sharing. Like, does this resonate? What would you change? What would you want to know? And when you do make it about them, I love what you said is, I'm okay if I mess up a word or two. I know I will. Like, that's okay. But my intention to leave them better than when they came in, that impact. So for all of you guys that want to speak and you're getting into the game and doing that, rewind that back and listen to what Alexi said, because I believe that shift alone, and then listen to the part about putting the reps in, that's going to help you accelerate and become better. So
100%. Yeah.
Let's switch gears, my friend. Like, let's talk about what you've built. Cause I love, you've got this online coaching community. I'm looking at what you've done now with Learn to Cut. You've got the mastermind that's starting there. Let's give her a little bit of feel, like what you're doing today, kind of the community you've built, really what the day-to-day looks like.
Yeah. So right now we have one of the largest online platforms for barbers and hairstylists, and the product that we have is pretty much, and this is the crazy thing, we get this question asked a lot, is like, how do you teach someone how to cut hair online, right?
Yeah.
Because most
Yeah.
of the time it's all in person, but we've broken it down in a way where it's so meticulous. Every step we have, every module, every video, with the coaches that supported, we look at the details that most people can't see, right? So the feedback and the results we've gotten is like literally life changing. We've turned people that had to feed a family of four to thriving, making past $10,000-15,000 months, and getting their own shops. And we have hundreds of testimonials. And the goal for our program, truthfully, it's like similar to the way, what I was saying when I was teaching, was that it's all about impact. Like, we're very much results based. We don't really care about how much money we're making. Obviously, that's a byproduct. But if the intention is pure, as I say, if you're ethical and you want to create the best product, everything else will follow. And our goal as well is to build the biggest community. I think at the end of the day, especially with the way the world's kind of working nowadays, people want to feel like they're a part of a tribe and community. And that is why I'm also doing this event. So to talk about the product, we have 780 members. And what we do is we get them to a point where we focus on their product first. So their skill set is the most important thing. So we make sure that their skill set is refined. We get them to a point where they understand precision-based cutting and traditional barbering. And then we analyze that, we assess it. Once we know they're good enough, then we move on to branding. Everyone wants to cut the chase and go to branding, but if you have a shitty product, it becomes really hard to brand yourself, right? So then once we get into the branding, we create the strategies, the systems, we develop, the content strategy, we show them what to do. Then at some point, if their product is good enough, we could start seeing new traffic. At that point, supply and demand, we get them to raise their prices. So we cut back on time and we could increase revenue, right? So the goal is to always make sure that they're making more money without having to burn themselves out, because as barbers, we're standing, cutting 12-hour days, right? So that's pretty much what we do.
Dude, I love that. And I love that this is applicable to anybody, right? So for all of you who are listening and like, well, yeah, I don't cut hair. I'm not a barber. I'm not all this stuff. Think about what Alexi just shared is the skill. And I believe this too. I mean, definitely with hair, but even in other products or services out there, if you're not good and you can't deliver, your retention and runoff is going to be so ridiculous. Yep. It doesn't matter how much you go brand yourself, sell, market, and all that. So I love you started there. Think about what your product today delivers in the service and how people rate you. And we always look at, what's that comeback? What's that retention? Like, how many other services can we offer them and would they buy them? If you don't get that right, the second part, when you talked about branding, and I know we talked about some of that earlier, man, you can go brand yourself all in the world, but it's almost like the overpromise, under-deliver scenario. Yeah. You start to build that, and then your brand becomes, yeah, you know what? You can go in there, you can get a cheaper cut, or you'll see them, but it's not a good end result. For the people that think, and not maybe just barber, but the skill piece, talk to me about that, because you guys have a pretty regimented, you go through routines, but is there anything you've learned, if you were to take that into another business segment, the skill, like, I don't think it ever ends. Like, I think about myself, like 23 years, I'm still learning and developing and have a coach and all that. How do you keep getting better and learning?
Honestly, I think, like, if I could put it in like a couple of words, it's attention to detail. I look at every small aspect of my craft, and what's got me to this point is that, I think this could apply to a lot of people as well. It's like, everyone wants to focus at the end product, but for me, I get so meticulous. I just want to make sure I master every small aspect. And eventually, when you master even a few aspects, you realize the end product just becomes so much better. So it's all about the attention to in the detail, right? So what I would say, like, for me, and maybe this could, you guys could factor this in your own business, is like for cutting, right? For the first month, I couldn't care less about the styling aspect of the haircut. I couldn't care less about how I was fading. All I focused on was sectioning, and I just refined my sectioning. And that's literally, I put 100% effort in my sectioning, to the point where, with the rest, I didn't even spend any time with. And then once the sectioning got good enough for an entire month, I knew that I never had to worry about it again. Then I moved on to the cutting. Then I moved on to the styling. Then I moved on to the consultation. So these small things just have, again, it's a snowball effect, right? But I think a lot of people miss the details. I think that's the juice. I think that's where it comes from.
It's huge. We talk about that a lot. And I can just relate in the mortgage business is the attention to detail there. And I always say, man, you could have the best consultation in the world. I love you shared that because I think that's important in any product or service there. But I always say then if your attention to detail over here is not really good and you don't ask the right questions, you don't enter the right income or assets or look at the credit correctly, and all, your attention to detail is going to create so many other snowball issues and problems. You could have the best consultation in the world. You could have had the best service in the world, like best rate, all these things like price competitive, but you created issues because you didn't get great at one. I love how you broke that out. It's like segment that out and be very intentional. And then you can improve on it. But once you get it locked in, that is your process.
Yeah.
That's what you know. So, that's huge. Let's transition a little bit into this because you've got an online coaching community. I know a lot of people out here, they may be coaches that listen to us. They may have a community that they lead and serve and what's there. What's been one of the biggest lessons you've learned in just keeping that online community engaged, scaling that to the level that you have? I mean, you had almost 600 plus, almost 700 online. Yeah. That's hard to do in a lot of different industries to keep them engaged. What have you learned there?
Again, I think this was a big problem I had even like when I first started in the industry, which is I thought I could do it all alone, and I'm sure you know that. It's honestly, my business really took off when I started realizing like, look, Alex, like if you want to get to your goals, you're going to start trusting people and you better start creating a culture and start leading this team to your mission and your values. Right. So I think everything really changed when I just hired really good people. So we went from, 0 people to 30 people in a span of a year. And I just hired, I just started looking, I started investing most of my time in finding the right people. And it started from just, like, I'm sure, it's like writing down my mission, writing down my values, my 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan, and just aligning those people with that roadmap. So I think in simple terms, it really comes down to just finding the right people, hiring the right people, and realizing that you can't do it on your own. Mm-hmm. And you realize how much less stress you have. Like I was just like running in circles. My brain was just operating in a way where I was just thinking about the same patterns and I wasn't progressing with my thoughts. I wasn't able to be creative and look at other opportunities because I was so much in the day-to-day. But then allowing me, and sometimes there's another thing that's important. Sometimes you have to cut profit. Maybe you have to cut a bit of profit. You need to look at it, you need to sacrifice the now for the later, right? So I had to realize, I got to spend this money and think abundantly rather than, okay, I got to keep all this, you know what I mean? Like think of it like, scarcity wise. So that's when everything changed. That's honestly when everything changed, when I hired team members.
Well, I can relate. That's why I was kind of laughing. It's like, oh man, we all think we can do it the best and nobody can do it as good as us. And got to be involved in all these things. And every breakthrough I've had, like big breakthrough and expansion, has been someone came on, they can do it just as well, most of the times better than I can, by the way. And then I hand it to them, like you said, and then we train them up, give them that mission, give them the clear expectations and all that, and then let them run with it. And I love a couple of spots in my business, especially with like social and some of these things. Like I love that I'm not in the day-to-day. Like I remember when I used to try to edit videos, how horrible I was at it. I hated to do it. The quality was just horrific. And then you start to outsource and you start to figure things out. And I love this point I don't want people to miss, is there is a point in expansion that I believe you need to invest. And look, I wish I could tell you it's going to be 90 days, 180 days. There's been times where it took me a year to get that baby off the ground and like, okay, now I'm starting to see a positive ROI. Yep. And I can see you nodding your head. So you similar experience?
It's literally like, like literally, I'm so glad you said that because there was a chapter in my business where I'm like, we're making money, like the revenue is growing, but the profits we're like either at a loss or we're just like, staying the same or stabilizing, but everything else was growing. And then eventually you just adjust a few things and you're more profitable. But it comes down to, I think, the same thing. Like this is what entrepreneurship is. Like how much are you willing to sacrifice? How much are you willing to go through that pain? Because I promise, looking at my life now to where it was before, it will get better. You just have to be willing to not quit. You just have to be willing to go through that pain. And sometimes it is financial, sometimes it is mental, sometimes it is all these different aspects. But I'm sure, as you know, as an entrepreneur, like nothing is guaranteed, but something will be guaranteed. If you don't continue, like you will fail and you will be in a bad spot.
Yeah, that's a good word. I always look at it that same way of, if I don't do this, I know what the outcome will be, and I will not grow. I will not expand. It will not get closer to the goal that I've set. And if I do it, it really is almost like a pain tolerance. Like, how much pain can I take? And sometimes it is financially, sometimes it is, the mental stress of it. But as your capacity grows, like I can tell that with you as somebody that you've been through enough of those seasons to go, you know what? This doesn't last forever. I'm going to get through this. And every time you do that, it's a breakthrough in your business. And I believe the only way you get to the next level, whatever that is for you, you got to endure some pain in the short term. And I always think about anything that's been worthwhile in my life has required me to sacrifice something or make really difficult decisions and do things. Sometimes my feelings, I didn't want to do them.
Yeah.
And until you can overcome that, you wonder why you're doing the same thing. I have friends in the business and they're in the same spot they were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, guys, doing the same thing over and over, that definition of insanity, it is true. So
true. Yeah.
Well,
and I think nowadays, I think it's important to listen to people like us that have gone through it, because maybe someone's in that position now and they needed to hear this message. Because I wish back then I had, a little bit more clarity, or, I had a mentor that was able to kind of be like, listen, man, this is what business is like. You know what I mean? Everyone's gone through this. Everyone's gone through the same exact chapter. So listening to these types of conversations are extremely beneficial. Yeah. And I'm glad you have a platform like this, because you could help one individual, and that's more than enough that's right, going through something like this.
That's why we do it. And man, I appreciate you taking time today. This has been a very insightful conversation. I think, especially my friends, and I was telling you, I know a couple folks that they run really cool barbershops here. I want to share it with them, share it out with our community, make sure they connect up with you. Even if you're not in the business of hair or a stylist or different things like that, I can tell you today was one of those classes that I always look at is there's things in your business and your life today. You can look at that conversation and go, you know what? I need to do that. You know what? That's a reminder for me, and that encouragement of what you're going through right now. You have other people. It's not unique to you. I can assure you that. And that can be an inspiration. And make sure you share that with people as we do these conversations, really not only to inspire people, but I always say to equip people to go out and face the challenges and face the opportunities ahead. Because I believe when we do this, we make our world and our community a better place. And we need more conversations like 100%. This. So, any final words before we wrap?
Any final words? Maybe you could help me with this one. What do you think, Brian? What should we tell them?
You know what? I loved your story of where you started and where you are. And I would love to know this is, did you ever think you would be where you are today when you were 16, 17, going through challenges with your mom, your dad, all the things there?
Yeah, no, impossible. Not once did I think I'd be in this position I'm in now. So I guess that leads to the final words. It's like, guys, like genuinely don't give up. If you have a dream, if you're passionate about something that you're doing right now, I promise you, if you keep at it and you're investing all your energy, you're taking all the actions you can, like literally when you go to bed and you feel like I've done everything in my power, I promise you things will get better. It is physically impossible. It won't. I'm telling you right now, you're hearing it from someone like me that barely, passed high school, wasn't creative, had no skill set, and I was able to get to this position at a very young age. And it was just pure hard work, grit, passion, and consistency. That's it.
I love it. Yeah, great way to end that. And guys, rewind this back. Make sure you share it with friends. As always, leave us a review on Apple's. We put that there. We're going to have Alexi's information so you can connect up with him. Make sure you share this with friends. I always say is the best friend is the one that shares something like this that'll impact people. And that's why we do it. So thank you, as always, everybody, for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Take care, everybody.